Well, I really don't have ADD. I'm not quite sure that's going to show up too well in the video. Right through here, it's got a pretty significant amount of erosion. And this edge is kind of tapered off. It evidently had been leaking for quite some time. That just doesn't happen overnight. And probably the reason why it was like that, because that bolt was broke off in the intake, and you know, what little bit they drove the truck, you know, they weren't going to go through all that trouble of trying to fix it when it started and ran, so don't really blame them. So before I go through the trouble of blasting this thing and painting it and replacing the studs for the exhaust pipe flange, it's just, I need to see if I can get this either brazed up or have maybe a machine shop where they can actually surface this. Maybe run a Bridgeport. I don't know. I'm not a machinist. Anyway, I'm just saying, trying to, because it doesn't have to be perfectly flat. I just need a continuous surface all the way around here for that gasket to be able to be held in place. So, but the guy that I need to talk to evidently had some type of incident this last weekend and ended up going to the hospital, so I'm waiting him to be on the mends, and I don't know anybody else. So I'm kind of stuck. So I'm actually been looking for an exhaust manifold replacement. Some of the used ones are worse than this one, and pretty expensive actually. And I did find a brand new old stock one, but it seemed like it was pretty pricey if I'm not mistaken. I want to say it was like $275. And I just didn't want to go that route right now. Plus, this bimetal spring and this little flapper here that helps warm the motor up, diverting exhaust gases to that underneath of that intake manifold. It's free, but it's not working. The little pin that this bimetal spring works off of right here, you know, it's rusted off, and so this is basically just doing nothing. And it might be pretty obvious, but these are gone. Threads are pretty much gone. But I have new studs and bolts. Well, I should say I have new studs and nuts. But before I go that route to install them in here and remove these other ones and blast this thing and paint it, I wanted to make sure that I could get this thing fixed. I don't want to put this thing back in there only for it to fail, you know, in a short period of time. Overall, the manifold's not in bad shape. It's just that surface right there is just all freaking eroded out. And if I could find somebody could braze it up, it doesn't have to be, there's no structural integrity here. It just needs to basically hold a gasket surface, you know, just to keep that gasket from blowing out. So I think it's plausible. I can clean that up, blast it, and we can get there. I just got to find somebody that can do it, because I don't have a oxygen acetylene rig, and I'm not very good at brazing. And you got to kind of know what you're doing when you're working with cast iron. So that's kind of where we're at on that. Carburetor is, and I'll post a link of where I found a base, because these throttle shafts, you know, these carburetors are getting old and they get remanufactured a bunch of times, and you know, after 50-something years, they're pretty much wore out. And for somebody else who has this truck with this little Rochester on it, it might be something. It's coming from China, and like I said, I'll post a link. It's $29 delivered, but it's a new base for this little Rochester, and it's slightly different, but it'll be a functional replacement, and it should work just fine. And I can give you a link to where I found it. It might save you from having to buy a new carburetor, or be able to preserve the one that came on your truck. So that's kind of why this thing is kind of dragging out. So I've been tinkering around with, I guess you would call it detailing the engine compartment while I'm waiting. The base of that carburetor, last I heard, is not going to probably get here until like mid-September, which I decided I'm not going to wait that long. I think I'm going to remove the carburetor off my Chevelle because I think it has one that's close enough that I can use. I'll overhaul this carburetor on the truck so we can get ready to put that back on, and when the new piece shows up, I'll go through the carburetor for the Chevelle and reinstall it back on that car. So I'm waiting for an answer on this, so hopefully that guy will be well enough to do something, or at least take a look at this in the next few days. If not, I'm just going to order one of those new old stock exhaust manifolds. And because some of the new ones that I had seen, they'll probably get the job done, but I mean, I've seen prices all over the board, but maybe you can find them cheaper. But some of them I've seen were several $100s, and I just don't want to spend that much for an exhaust manifold. Not if there's a way I can fix this one, because these things actually do serve a purpose. I know a lot of people don't care, but they actually do serve a purpose, and they make a big difference on the drivability of these cars. They were put there for a reason. They just didn't throw them on there for good looks. And the reason why most people don't mess with them is because when they got their truck, they weren't working anyway, and they don't actually understand probably what they actually are supposed to do. But I think I can probably drill this pin out and replace that, because the spring itself is in good shape. It just doesn't have anything to hold on to. It needs to be attached to that pin. And I think these studs are good enough. And then, like I said, I've already got replacements for there. I've got some high temp cast iron paint, and I got some blasting media for a buddy of mine's cabinet. So I mean, I've been working on it. I just can't get there from here. There's just not enough hours in the day, and everything is out of stock. But I've been working on underneath this truck. I think by tomorrow, after I put the finishing touches on it, it's going to be pretty surprising. I'm going to leave the finish on these things as they are, because they actually were more of a like a light gunmetal gray, like a phosphate type finish. I mean, they were kind of a rough surface to begin with. And these are actually in really good shape. When all the water dries off of them, I think a coat of oil, they're going to look actually pretty good. And then I'm going to put a finishing touch on top of this to kind of give it a little bit of sheen, so it looks original, but it looks clean. And then I started cleaning up the firewall. Boy, that was a pain in the butt, because I had to polish this stuff right here. Just, it's smooth. I mean, the stuff is smooth. It's just, I don't know, I guess it's just severe oxidation and stuff, just from, road salt. It polishes off, but golly, it ain't easy. I polished that off, and it actually turned out pretty good, but I had to be real gentle, because that marking right there is actually just paint, and it's not very, it's just, it was just written on top of the other paint, so it doesn't take much to take it off. So I had to do it real slow and real gentle to keep from removing that. And I still have the other side. And we're going to finish up by taking off these motor mounts and things like that. And I'm going to kind of detail the part of the frame that you can see, and then rust proof it. It's coming along. Golly, it's slow. And mainly it's just because I'm waiting for parts. And I can't work on it 24 hours a day, and I'm working in a yard when I am, and it is brutally hot standing out here in the frickin' sun working on this thing. But between the degreasing products that I have, I think we're going to be able to get this thing pretty clean, and I think this thing is sharp. My stuff was already shipped, and that's all the decals and the rubbers. These are freaking, I mean, they're like concrete. I mean, they are like concrete. And I got some new rubbers here. And I think that's everything that I got I got some other stuff, but that's all the stuff that's gonna for the underneath. And then the cap, rotor, condenser, wires, plugs, all that stuff showed up yesterday. And I'm looking for some replacement hoses. I just didn't want to go down and buy some heater hose. These appear to be the originals. I've been doing some research, and the originals, the 3/4 inch, the larger size hose had the ribbed hose, and the 5/8 seemed like it had some markings with some type of a line on it. It's hard for me to imagine this stuff has been on here this long, but you just don't go down to the hardware or to the auto parts and buy these hoses. These actually kind of look like a factory type hose. I know these clamps aren't factory. If I'm not mistaken, they had the little spring type clamps. I think they call them a Corbin clamp. And then these had the little tower clamps. And I know these hoses aren't original. There's a Gates down here on this lower hose, which is, it feels like gum. This is bad. And this upper hose doesn't actually feel much better. So I'm going to go ahead and get all new hoses and clamps and flush it out and replace the antifreeze. Polish out this firewall, and I'll detail and clean up the heater box and blower motor. I don't know. I think when we're done, this thing is going to be freaking sharp. It's cleaning up a lot better than I had planned, so I apologize for it taking so long, but I don't have any control over how long it takes for this stuff to get delivered to me, or how long it takes to find it. So anyway, we'll post some little small updates. I'll try to make them really short, just to kind of give a baseline of where we're at and where we're going. Thank you, guys.